Hey, what's up guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Tech, and today I'm going to discuss about the Oppo Find X3 Pro versus Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max. We will see its differences, specs, benchmarks, battery life, camera and other performance. We will got also the pros and cons of this phone. So let's get started. In 2021, we got to see the iPhone 13 Pro Max and the Oppo Find X3 Pro. The two flagship smartphones have the 6.7 inches Oppo with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 that was released on March 11, 2021, against the iPhone 13 Pro Max, which is powered by the A15 Bionic chipset that came out 7 months after. On this page, we will find the test specs, strengths and weaknesses of each gadget. So make sure you hold on to the end of this video, because you will see some crazy differences between them. So first of all, let's start with the key differences. Reasons to buy Oppo Find X3 Pro. The Oppo Find X3 Pro have the new Bluetooth version 5.2, have a fingerprint sensor and also uses the LPDDR5 RAM, also have the higher pixel density, also uses the faster storage, that is UFS 3.1, also features the reverse charging, and CPU has 2 more cores and also weighs 47 grams less. Now let's see about the Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max. Reasons: shows 49% longer battery performance. Wait, what? iPhone is showing 49% longer battery performance. I mean, okay. Delivers 36% higher maximum brightness against 1060 against 777 nits. Wait, what? The rear camera has also 3x optical zoom. Okay, that is plus point for the iPhone. Apple releases software updates and supports their phone a few years longer than Oppo. Yes, that is also correct. Wait, iPhone 13 Pro Max have 10% better performance in Antutu benchmark, 843K versus 765K. Okay. This phone is also 7 months newer and also have 89%. Wait, what? Also have the 89% faster in single core Geekbench 5 test. A 1757 and 929 points. Wait, what? Also the front facing camera can record up to 4K. Wait, that was some crazy differences between the two flagship smartphones of this 2021. Let's see the review of this Oppo Find X3 Pro versus the iPhone 13 Pro Max. The display, they are same displays, but the performance though, the Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max is clearly ahead, crashing the Find X3 Pro that scores 84 and iPhone 13 Pro Max scores 91. The battery life is also goes to 13 Pro Max, that is 90. And the battery of Find X3 Pro is only kept on 75%. Wait, what? The Find X3 Pro scores in camera 76% and the iPhone 13 Pro Max crashes the scores of the Oppo Find X3 Pro. The connectivity though goes to Oppo Find X3 Pro because the Snapdragon 888 uses the latest modem. So let's start with the display. The Find X3 Pro uses the AMOLED display and the 13 Pro Max is using OLED display. They both size is 6.7 inches, but the resolution is clearly ahead to the Oppo Find X3 Pro, that is Quad HD plus resolution, and the iPhone 13 Pro Max is clearly down. The aspect ratio of Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max is also ahead, but the PPI density of Find X3 Pro is far more ahead than the iPhone 13 Pro Max. The PPI density of Find X3 Pro is 525 versus 458 PPI density of the 13 Pro Max, as you guys can see on the screen right now. They both use the 120Hz refresh rate, but the Samsung, they both use the 120Hz refresh rate, but the iPhone have the Dolby Vision and the Find X3 Pro has HDR10 plus. Screen protection though, iPhone 13 Pro Max using the ceramic shield. Wow, that is far more stronger than a Gorilla Glass 5. The display features also goes to the Find X3 Pro because its features are always on display. Okay. Now let's talk about the design and build. The first one goes to the iPhone 13 Pro Max. That is, the height of this phone is 6.33 inches and the weight of the Find X3 Pro is 74 millimeter, that is 2.91 inches. That's not a pretty big deal, right? Okay, let's move on to the next one. That both phones are waterproof. The rear material is using the glass. The frame material built on the metal, and the colors are also in the iPhone is on 4 colors and the Find X3 on 3 colors. But the fingerprint sensor goes to Find X3 Pro, that is featuring the in-display fingerprint. And iPhone 13 Pro Max has no fingerprint. Alright, and the screen-to-body ratio is also far more ahead in the Find X3 Pro, that is 89%. Alright, now let's move on to the big stuff of this phone, that is performance. The iPhone 13 Pro Max uses the A15 Bionic chipset that is far more faster than a Snapdragon 888 in single core and multi-core CPU performances. But let's start with the CPU. The chipset Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max is using the A15, but as you guys can see it in the screen right now, the iPhone 13 Pro Max has 6 cores versus the Snapdragon 888 5G has 8 cores, but still iPhone 13 Pro Max manages to outcome that performance because of its new architecture. They both based on a 5nm technology, but the graphics is clearly far more ahead in the Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max, that is 1200 megahertz faster than 840 megahertz on the Find X3 Pro. But in the memory, the Oppo Find X3 Pro crashes the iPhone 13 Pro Max by using the LPDDR5 RAM that is far more faster than the iPhone 13 Pro Max LPDDR4X RAM. As you guys can see, the RAM sizes are 8GB and 12GB, but the 13 Pro Max only comes with 6GB. The memory type is far more ahead than memory type of iPhone 13 Pro Max. The memory type, they are using LPDDR5 with a memory clock of 32 MHz, that is 3.2 GHz, and also have 4 channels. But the iPhone 13 Pro Max is still using the old processor. I'm a little disappointed to see that, but okay. They are using the LPDDR4X RAM, that is, I mean, what? They are kept on 23 MHz, 2300 MHz. Alright, okay. And also he uses the 2 channels. The storage type though, the iPhone 13 Pro Max has 4 storage types, that is 128GB, the second one is 256GB, and third one is 512GB, and the fourth one is 1TB. Wow. But the storage type of the Oppo Find X3 Pro has also kept on 256GB. But they are using the faster USB 3.1 storage versus the NVMe. There is no memory card slot on both phones because they are flagships. Okay. The benchmark, as you guys can see, the Find X3 Pro is far more lesser than the iPhone 13 Pro Max, gaining the 89% of its performance on a single core, beating the Find X3 Pro. But in the multi-core, the Find X3 Pro have a little less points than iPhone 13 Pro Max. iPhone 13 Pro Max also gains 42%. Wow, in the multi-core performance. That's why, because of the 815 Bionic chipset. Now, let's talk about the Antutu benchmark 9 of the both phones. As you guys can see, the iPhone 13 Pro Max gains 10% performance from the because of the A15 Bionic chipset versus the Snapdragon 888. I'm a little disappointed to see that the Snapdragon 888 is showing less performance than A15 Bionic chipset. Wait. As you guys can see, the CPU scores goes to the A15 Bionic. The GPU score also goes to A15 Bionic. The memory score also goes to A15 Bionic, and the UX also goes to A15 Bionic. I mean, I'm a little disappointed to see that. The 3D wildlife performance also goes to Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max, gains up to 68% performance in the 3D wildlife performance. Stability test also shows the 80% performance of the Apple A15 Bionic chipset that is using in the Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max. The graphics test also crashes the Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 in the graphics test using 3D wildlife performance, gaining 57 FPS on the A15 Bionic. As you guys can see the screen right now, the graphics test also goes to A15. The graphics score also ahead from the Snapdragon 888 to the A15 Bionic chipset. Now let's talk about the software. The operating system on the Find X3 Pro is Android 11, their own custom version of ColorOS 11.2. The operating system size is 19 GBs, but on the iPhone, they are using iOS 15. That is the most newly version of its own operating system. That is far more efficient and security ahead from the Snapdragon 888. And also the operating system size is only 13 GBs. That is plus point for the Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max. Now let's talk about the battery. The battery capacity of the Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max is only 43,502 mAh battery, but far more ahead than the 45 mAh battery. But in the charging power, the Oppo Find X3 Pro winning because of the 65 watt support of fast charging, only the 20 watt on the 13 Pro Max. There is no wireless charging on the and there's also wireless charger on both sides, but Oppo Find X3 Pro have the support 30 watt of fast charging versus the 7.5 on the Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max. The Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max also loses on the fast charging, but gains on the on the battery performance on the phone. As you guys can see, the Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max can charge in 1.46 hours. Wow! But the charging speed of Find X3 Pro is only half an hour. Wow! That is far more ahead than the 13 Pro Max. Now let's talk about its cameras. The best camera goes to, you will see the result in the end of this video. But let's talk about the camera. They are using, both have 4 lenses, but the Oppo Find X3 Pro uses the 50 megapixel as the main lens. The Oppo Find X3 Pro uses the 50 megapixel versus the iPhone 13 Pro Max uses the 12 megapixel, and also the zoom lens on the Find X3 Pro is only kept on 2x optical zoom, but the 13 Pro Max has 3 times optical zoom. There is no 8K support on both, but the 4K recording is up to kept on 60 fps on both. The slow motion, though, they are the same, but the widest lens is the iPhone 13 Pro Max using the 12-120 degree. Let's talk about the lenses. They are using the 4 lenses. The main lens is 50 megapixel plus 13 megapixel ultra wide plus 50 megapixel telephoto plus 3 megapixel monochromatic lens. But this iPhone 13 Pro Max also uses the 4 lenses. The main lens is 12 megapixel plus the ultra wide lens is also 12 megapixel plus the telephoto lens is also 12 megapixel. Now let's talk about this lens's incomplete details of its manufacturers. Now let's talk about the selfie camera. The Oppo Find X3 Pro uses a 32 megapixel selfie camera versus the 12 megapixel on 13 Pro Max. The image resolution is also ahead, but the aperture goes to 13 Pro Max that is using f2.2. The focal length of the 13 Pro Max is clearly ahead from the 26mm on X3 Pro, but 23mm on 13 Pro Max. The pixel size also goes to the 13 Pro Max, but the sensor size is clearly larger on the Find X3 Pro because they are using a 32 megapixel sensor. But the video resolution of the Find X3 Pro is kept on 1080p up to 30 fps, but the 13 Pro Max can record 4K up to 60 fps. That is far more clearly ahead on the 13 Pro Max. The DxO Mark test shows that the 13 Pro Max is clearly ahead in the photo quality and video quality and the generic camera score, as you guys can see on the screen right now. Now let's talk about the connectivity of these both phones. These both phones support the Wi-Fi 6, but the Find X3 Pro have newer Bluetooth version of 5.2, means better coverage and better sound performance. But the USB version is 3.1 versus the USB version of 2. And pretty much same stuff on this phone, right, as you guys can see on the screen right now. There's also NFC port on both. The network, they are using the 2SIM technology and also uses the nano SIM technology, but the eSIM support is only kept on 13 Pro Max. And also LTE Cat up to 24 versus the LTE Cat up to 18, and also both uses the 5G support. But there is now let's talk about the sound. So there is no 3.5mm headphone jack, but they are using the stereo speakers with the Dolby Atmos technology. That is awesome. The Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max clearly wins against the Oppo Find X3 Pro, winning in camera and battery performance and single-core, multi-core threaded performance and operating system performance, and pretty much in every stuff. The Apple iPhone 13 Pro Max wins in this competition. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, then sub to the channel will be awesome, and also press the bell icon and leave a comment down below. Thank you for watching. It's Tech, and see ya in the next video.